Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Out of the Box 2025 in Milan. I hope you're all sufficiently caffeinated, watered, fed, enjoying yourselves, enjoying the lovely sunshine. So this morning we've had some talks already about coffee being a habit, as being a habitual, being a meditation, something at home that you it becomes part of your day, part of everyday life, and something that we're really able to enjoy. We've heard about how we can grow an industry with a conscience, how we can look at scale and how we can look at growth. And now we're going to look at a little bit about the future, a little bit about what coffee is going to look like or what coffee might look like, and some of the challenges that we're currently facing within the industry. So I will hand over, who's leading? I will hand over my microphone and thank you very much. Enjoy.
Does this work? Hello, is it working? Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Guido Preti. I'm the Sustainability Manager at Marzocco, and I'm glad to introduce the panel, The Future of Coffee and the Current Climate. So, as we all know, coffee is more than just a morning and daily ritual. It's more than, it's at the heart of many cultures, but it's also, it represents a global industry that supports the livelihood of 125 million people worldwide. However, there are many challenges posed to the coffee, and so it's under severe threat. And one thing we know for sure is that the future of coffee will depend on how today we face these challenges and we tackle them. So we're going to tap into this with our three experts, and they represent three different point of views and three different perspectives of the value chain. So from farming, from a social and anthropologist point of view, and from training and retail. And so we'll see, we want to explore with them how the future of coffee hopefully can not only be resilient, but also more inclusive and more exciting than ever. So please join me welcoming our panel guests. So we have Rachel Peterson. She's Sales and Marketing at Hacienda Esmeralda. Then Lucía Rivera Lima, Anthropologist and Sociologist. And Jessica Sartiani. She's a trainer, barista, and a business development manager at Oatly, Italy. So we'll run 2 rounds of questions, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. So we'll start with Rachel, and so to define the current climate. Yourself and your family have been producing specialty coffee in Panama for more than 20 years, and many of these were including some of the most awarded geisha lots. And so what, from your perspective and your experience in Panama, what are the main challenges in terms of, for instance, climate change and environmental challenges that, and how are these affecting coffee production and the resilience of coffee, the timing?
So, you can hear me okay? Yeah. So I would start by saying the climate change is affecting the plants in a way where we are having to push into higher elevation areas to grow coffee that is going to have a good flavor profile to it. It's stressing the trees. There's going to be a lot more disease and pests on the elevation that once was perfectly good for coffee, 1,400 meters, 1,500 meters, 1,600 meters. So we have to push it up to 1,800 plus. We have the erratic weather with sudden downpours or long stretches of no rain are bringing around problems that like erosion that are affecting both the nutrients and the soil as well as our farm infrastructures, creating the need for things like putting in irrigation systems. Let me think. So the pests, again, we're going to have a lot more diseases going on. We have more leaf rust. We have the Broca, the coffee borer disease that is going up into higher elevations because of the warmer climates. In a more personal level, so this past year, we lost 70% of our Catuai production because during the month, normally our rainy seasons goes up to the end of November. During the entire month of December and January, it downpoured. So all that coffee that's on the tree is going to be lost. It fell to the ground and it's gone. These erratic climate changes are making the flowering be unstable. The maturation doesn't, the plants are confused, they don't know what's going on. The rain is going to make the coffee cherries split, so it's going to affect the cup quality. Let me see what else I can say about that. I had another thought regarding this, and right now it's not coming to me. But in general, it is obviously affecting how we can properly have drying and processing facilities where we're having to invest in things like climate-controlled rooms. And again, we're in a privileged position to do that because of the premiums we receive from coffee, where we can invest in climate control rooms where we can control the fermentation temperatures, and we can control the drying room, the humidity, the temperature, and the airflow. And all of these things, oh, and even obviously the coffee storage, because at our farm level where it used to be, or where our storage or our processing, our beneficio is at, it used to be okay. It used to be okay weather, and now it's super hot there. We can't patio dry anymore. I mean, that's something that's completely off of any possibility because the coffee would be dry in one day. So it's changed the way that we're doing our processing as well. And so, yeah, I guess that would be the answer to that I can think of right now.
Wow, that's a lot. That was a heavy start. And so we can see the challenges that we're talking about. They're not just theoretical, and they're not just something that might happen. It's already affecting the production of coffee. And we have seen that from as you said, a privileged perspective. But as we know, coffee, like 95% of the coffee production is from smallholder farmers, which might be even more exposed to these challenges. So, Lucía, from your experience, and so what are these the same challenges that farmers are experiencing, and how can global institutions support also the smallholder farmers in the way to adapt to these changes?
Okay, thank you. You can hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. So this is actually a very complex question, and I think you already started answering it. And I want to answer it maybe in three parts. One environmental, as you were saying, economic one, and also a social one. And I want to start by saying that what you just said, like recognizing that not all farmers are the same. That means that not all farmers are affected in the same way. And so the core challenges at the end are very different because we have the large producers, and we have here a representative from Hacienda Esmeralda, so I think you provided your vision very well. But it's very unfortunate to not have a smallholder here among us, a producer that is actually smaller scale. And I want to focus on smallholders in my answer, because they are the most numerous, as you just said. So globally, approximately 25 million farmers depend on coffee production, and 80% of them are smallholder farmers, as you were saying. And that means that nearly half of them live on less than $3 a day. So that is very little, right? So what are these shared challenges? As you just mentioned, there's the environmental challenges, and climate change is the biggest threat to all producers, is reshaping how coffee can be grown. Higher temperatures are pushing coffee cultivation into higher altitudes, as you just said. According to FAO, for example, by 2050, up to 50% of today's coffee growing land could become completely unsuitable. So where are we going? There is also, as you mentioned, unpredictable rains, longer droughts, and all the pest outbreaks that become even more frequent, like leaf rust that destroyed the Central American economy a decade ago. And all of these, of course, affect both yields and quality. And these impacts are not felt equally. So large producers, as you just exemplified, actually have irrigation systems, access to resilient coffee varieties, digital weather tools to plan ahead. You were talking about weather control, temperature control, and overall just more time, resources, land to test, experiment, and let's say to risk, right? But there's the smallholders on the other side that they rely mostly on natural resources, like instead of irrigation, rain. They have limited access to extension services or climate information. That makes adaptation to climate change much more harder. Then I want to go to the economic challenges, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking a lot. I just drafted my point, so sorry if you see me reading. So as you know, of course, I might repeat the obvious, coffee is a commodity. It means it moves through many borders, and the value chain can be very long and vague. So there is this very high price volatility. Prices change constantly. For example, last year, global coffee prices went up by almost 40%. But this doesn't necessarily mean that farmers earn more money. For example, worldwide, many smallholders still receive prices below the poverty line. I don't know if you know what the poverty line is right now. It's $2 per person per day. So because of much of the profit is still captured by intermediaries. So can you imagine living with just $2 a day? And then volatility, of course, of prices is a huge problem for smallholders because they have to make decisions on where to invest. But if prices go up and down all the time, it's very difficult to know how to invest to survive. So small farmers often depend heavily on cooperatives, on intermediaries to access markets, right? They often can't access credit, insurance, or basic infrastructure like storage or roads. And so for certifications, they are extremely expensive, so sometimes they cannot afford these either. In contrast, large producers can manage risk much more easily. They may benefit from economies of scale, direct access to international markets, and the ability to better protect themselves when all of these prices change, right? Then, I'm not done yet, so sorry. Social dimensions. That's another reality we cannot ignore. And again, it's different between smallholders and large producers. So many farmers live in multidimensional poverty, as I just mentioned, and they have limited access to education, healthcare, housing, social protection. They have trouble surviving the shocks and investing in their future, and most of their workforce depends on their family or their own communities. But once again, not all smallholder farmers are the same, because we need to get, an intersectional lens. And this is where gender inequality comes again. It's very persistent. According to the ICO, between 20 and 30% of coffee farms are operated by women globally. But up to 70% of labor in coffee production is provided by women, depending on the region. But they still lack land rights, access to credit, and decision-making in cooperatives. Then also migration, it's increasing a lot because there is a decrease in rural opportunities and investment. And this is many young people all around the world and also in producing countries, they are migrating. They sometimes alone and sometimes with their entire families just searching for more stable livelihoods, right? And on the other hand, again, because I like to make this contrast, we have the social challenges within larger plantations, right? So a key issue is the persistence of vulnerable labor dynamics in large plantations, so not smallholders. For example, we talk a lot about the farmers and the producers, but I want to highlight the invisible workforce of the coffee sector. And these are the pickers. And they are often young, seasonal or migrant workers, and in many countries also indigenous. And their work is completely essential, especially during harvest. But a lot of them still face precarious conditions with very long hours, low pay, and limited access to healthcare, labor protection. This is still a reality that they all face. And then there is also child labor, which remains a concern, particularly in contexts where entire families migrate for seasonal work, and children help to feed the household income, of course. So you also asked me how institutions can help. I just want to give a few points very quickly. So first, by investing in climate resilience, through climate resilient coffee varieties, promoting agroforestry systems is very important. Second, by making value chains more inclusive, I just mentioned, supporting cooperatives, promoting transparent pricing, ensuring that farmers actually earn a living income, and through financial inclusion as well, improving access to affordable credit and insurance, and finally, by promoting social equity and decent work. Oh no, this is mine.
So, thank you, Lucía. That was very, very interesting and intense as well to see how much of social and economic impacts are also posed to the value chain of coffee. Sometimes you just drink a cup of coffee and you don't realize how long the value chain is and what are all the issues behind a simple cup of coffee. So it was very interesting to hear about also how they affect differently in the value chain and the inequalities that even just climate change can create. But it was good to hear at the end that global institutions can also support to mitigate these effects. And let's move along the value chain and get to the other end. And so from your experience in the retail sector, do you think that all these issues are perceived nowadays by consumers? And do you think sustainability is becoming more important also for coffee shops, coffee roasters, and working at Oatly? How is Oatly driving this shift?
Yeah, so thank you, Rachel and Lucia, for your answers, because we're really eye-opening. And I think, following the question, that actually there's a big consciousness about how is our impact. All this issue that we're facing with climate change is not happening from one day to another, but it's just a reaction of a long time and years where we were consuming, and we also don't have the consciousness of our impact. That's why I think that right now sustainability is something fundamental for the future. Otherwise, it will be impossible to have coffee. And it's important for us to keep an eye on a coffee chain, because we are in a privileged position. We are not just consumer, but we can make a change with conscious consuming of what we are eating. So following the question, Oatly was born as a project that want to find a drink that was more sustainable than cow's milk, because we know how much the food industry has an impact to the climate change. And this was always a focus for the company. If we look at the number, our barista edition has the 58% lower climate impact compared to cow's milk. So we can make a choice. We can make a small revolution every morning if we choose to drink not dairy milk instead of a dairy milk, because actually it's not sustainable anymore. We know how much we throw away every year. In the last research, they was talking about the 135 kilos of food that we throw away every year per person in the world, and this is a lot. We've lost all this in the coffee industry chain. So every single action can reflect our impact to the planet. And I think that this is really, really important. Also, as a coffee trainer and also with Oatly, as working together with baristas and coffee shop, we're trying to suggest to do some small action to decrease the impact. For example, we suggest to serve some drinks directly with no dairy milk. For example, there's chai latte or some signature drink that they straight being served with Oatly. So usually the consumer sometimes didn't think, we always, not always, but frequently we drink and we eat with an automatic pilot. Because I always have that kind of diet, I always have that kind of cappuccino every day. I never think that maybe I can try something different. So with education, which is fundamental, we can guide the consumers, because it's not the fault of the consumer. Maybe the consumer doesn't have the information to understand how much is the impact of every single choices we do every day. When I was a barista, I was always so sad every time I see people ask me for espresso to go. Because, in Italy especially, we just have our espresso at the bench, very quick, and we are talking about a 35, 40 ml drink. For me, it's something, I always say, why you are taking away? You can enjoy it here, 5 minutes. It's not so long. It's not a cappuccino. I can understand a cappuccino. And, it's something that really can change, because you say, I don't think that my single espresso cup, paper cup, will make a disaster in the world. No, but if 300 people think about this in one city and then in another city, then it will be a big impact. And Oatly is also the first food and beverage company recognized as climate solution company. So by the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. And this means that our products actively replace more climate-intensive alternatives. And this is something important. And Oatly is really focused on decreasing the CO2 impact in every product, and also the use of water, and reuse all the waste on production. And I think this is really important. And also we had some projects with baristas. For example, in 2022, we did the Big Idea Grant for Coffee. So Oatly has offered $400 in sustainability grants to small coffee business in the USA. And I think that is always something that we are focused in, because it's not only a project that you create today and then tomorrow we will see. It's something that needs to be done every single day by everyone in the coffee chain, because it's really important for the job that all the people are doing in the fields and in the plantation.
Thank you, Jessie, for your point of view, and for also this call to action to the individual's behavior, that each one of us, if we sum them up, we can make it a change and we can make the difference. And the goal of this panel was also to see, and we have our study already to do that, to see how the initiatives and the projects can ensure a future for coffee. And in this direction, I wanted to ask Rachel to explain to us what brought your farm to choose to devote a large part of it to natural wildlife habitats, and to so proactively promote biodiversity, and to choose not to use pesticides. So was this in the direction of the future of for the coffee industry? How did you get to this?
Well, we have actually, you're talking about the one farm, Cañas Verdes, but we have 3 farms where we produce coffee and produce geisha coffee specifically. And all 3 of them have at least 200, 250 hectares or more dedicated to preservation and wildlife. It's just, it's part of our family's values, I guess. And on a personal note, I would like the future generations, I would like my kids, I would like my nieces and nephews to have an experience similar to mine when I was growing up in the farm in Panama, and have all these areas where there's nothing but forests and beautiful nature that you can, and where animals live. I mean, we've got a huge amount of wildlife living in those wildlife areas. We've got pumas and jaguars, and we've got deer, we've got all kinds of it. We've got the whole food chain. So that's just something that's very important to us, especially to my father, who's sort of the founder of, my grandfather was the original buyer of the farm, but my father succeeded, and it was something that was very important to him always to preserve the areas around us, or to make them better. When we moved there, in fact, it was all pasture land, and he did a lot around planting native trees in a lot of the areas to avoid erosion and so on. But I guess more than that, ecosystems equal farm resilience. You're gonna have the native, or let's say the native forests and the shade trees are going to preserve the temperature, make sure that the temperature is sort of stable. They're gonna preserve the moisture, the humidity. They're gonna make sure there's less erosion. And that way it's gonna ensure that the plants are able to mature in a more stable way, and there's less problems with these types of climate change issues that we're having inside of something where we have these forest reserves around the coffee. The birds, the bats, the wasps, the bees, they're gonna help avoid pests or make less problems with the coffee diseases. They're going to help the pollination additionally, so they're gonna hopefully increase our yield in that very self-sustained area. The not use of pesticides is going to make sure that our microbial living earth is well, and it's going to preserve our water systems. It's going to make sure that we have a soil, organic material that's building up, which is important in those areas. I had another point here, which I right now can't remember. What is I going to move on to here? Sorry. Yes. So, well, yeah, and healthy shade systems are just going to make sure they're going to ensure that we're going to get the delicate notes that are expected from the coffees that we're producing. So, I mean, all in all, everything affects everything else, and you have to be very careful. And having these large wildlife areas surrounding the coffee ensures that the coffee is going to be better off, and it's not overdeveloped, overused.
Wow. So very interesting to see how something that has born from values and the close to the definition of sustainability to preserve the environment for the generations to come, then has an actual impact and a positive effect on the resilience and quality of coffee itself. And so, and looking at your experience and going back to the social aspects of coffee production, you have had an experience in Guatemala with indigenous and marginalized communities. And so we have seen beforehand that climate change and challenges related to coffee can create inequalities. So what are the steps that we can take to make sure that no one is left behind in the coffee industry in the future?
Okay, so I know this question is about the future, but I want to go a bit to the past because we need to know about the past to better handle our future. And I want to do that with an example of Guatemala, Latin America. And practically, I just want to say that coffee in Latin America has a colonial legacy, and that evolved into neo-colonial export models. So in other words, these models were highly based in, inequality, labor exploitation, and elite control. And this still shapes those challenges that you were mentioning. So the smallholders that work today, especially if they are indigenous in Guatemala, for example, 50%, almost 50% of the population is indigenous, Maya indigenous, and they are also the most vulnerable. So just to give you a bit of a context of the history, in Guatemala, as well as in other Central American countries, coffee became the major export crop after the Liberal Revolution, 1871. And that's when indigenous and communal lands were expropriated to sell and create huge plantations, very large plantations. So a new class of landowners appeared, and they were the finqueros. When you buy your coffee that says finca, blah, blah, the finqueros. And they relied a lot on that forced labor done mainly by indigenous peoples. And this was supported by laws, but even when these laws were abolished, they changed. The indigenous families, however, had no land, and they continued to do the cycle of precarious migration every year for seasonal picking of coffee. So I just want to say that this is something that keeps repeating even after many, many years. But today, we have many smaller plantations, right? So for example, most Guatemalan coffee producers today are smallholders. Smallholders means that they have less than 5 hectares of land, and they work these small lands. So for example, I want to give an example from this book called Make Better Coffee of anthropologist Ted Fisher. And he practically contrasts these Maya small farmers that have their coffee production right next to Finca El Injerto in Guatemala. Who knows Finca El Injerto? I see some heads nodding, okay. So practically they share the exact same things, same location, altitude, weather, they're neighbors. But El Injerto is an award-winning coffee and sells at premium prices, right? They have the capital to invest in technology networks, but the smallholders, even if they have almost the same quality of coffee, let's say, they rely on cooperatives and on intermediaries to reach these high-quality markets. And very often they don't. So this is just to illustrate the inequalities that persist in the coffee sector. So what steps can we take to make the coffee sector more inclusive and equitable? I want to highlight at least 4, and that's redefining value and quality. Quality should not just be about cup scores and export standards. The true quality includes also living incomes for farmers, decent work for laborers, environmental stewardship, as you were saying, and community well-being. And this also means valuing the whole process, from the indigenous, possibly farmer, that has his shade-grown trees, to young women managing cooperatives, to the migrant pickers. Then there's also indigenous peoples, right? It means recognizing also diverse knowledge systems. Indigenous peoples are stewards of some of the most climate-resilient coffee landscapes in the world. And their traditional practices that sometimes include agroforestry and different water management systems, they bring us key lessons to learn how to adapt to climate change. We need platforms for intercultural and intergenerational dialogue as well. And again, intersectionality. Because equity means, of course, thinking and tackling the overlapping challenges faced by women, youth, and indigenous peoples who work in the producing side of the value chain. And then, yes, just talking about young people, they are already central to agri-food systems, not just coffee. And in many rural areas, they are the ones who still face the most challenges. Access to land, finance, technology. They are the most excluded from leadership overall. And to change this, we must also support them and support youth-led initiatives, funding, provide funding for them, and of course, always through an intersectional lens.
Again, thank you. Thank you very much, Lucía, for your perspective again. It's very, very interesting, and just to see how all these social impacts that coffee can have as well. And Jessica, how could we transmit also all these issues to the next generations? You are an SCA trainer and a barista trainer, and so how do you think we can transmit all this knowledge to the next generations of people working in the coffee sector, and to empower them and to make sure they take all this also in consideration to make coffee less unequal and more inclusive?
Yeah, so I think that is fundamental that education is accessible for everyone. So it shouldn't be something exclusive, but more inclusive, because we need to spread the word of coffee as much as possible. So it doesn't mean that we only have €500 courses for barista training, or prices that are almost half of the salary of a barista, because even, I mean, in Italy is not one of the best jobs that people used to do. They always do coffee just because everyone say, it's easy to make coffee. You know, it's something that everyone do and everyone can make it, but no, it's not like that. It's something more. And when I do education, when I do some training, I always try to find to open or get focused to something that can grow and improve the passion of this product, because it's not just a cup of coffee. As Lucía also said, there's a lot of history that we need to keep in mind to learn from which was done in the past and be able to not repeat anymore we know coffee is one of the most colonial products, and we need to remember this, and we need to educate people about why also the price was always so low and why we shouldn't pay so much less for coffee. And I think also that from the side of the coffee expert, we should be more empathy and open to people, because we are not like the big professor of science, but we are people passionate, and we need to have more people in education. So we need to share all our knowledge. This is the only way to grow the coffee industry. And education is not a privilege, but should be open for everyone. And I remember when I studied at the hospitality school, when I was really young, so long time ago. And I remember that the section of coffee was just 5 pages, talking about how works the machine and how many grams, seconds, and also about the coffee plantation was just 2 pages. So there wasn't a focus on that, because, you know, sometimes in Italy, there's not so many money in the school, so they don't have a kind of research of what's going on. They can't have maybe an SAT that can go deeply to the argument. So I think that it will be nice if we can create a channel of trainings for young people, because I really like the young generation. The new generation, I see that they are really focused, and you can see that they are looking what's happening in the world and not only in their garden. And also, I think in the last years we see a lot of awareness of what's going on, and people is not just saying stay on a side, but they want to make their voice loud. So I think that is a good thing for the future, and we should help the new generation to be more able to start in the coffee industry and not make a closure community. And also there, I think that change can happen every day. And also in there, I would like to see more education also in the schools regarding diet, food, to know that maybe if you have, I mean, not everyone should have to be vegan from tomorrow, but maybe if you don't have meat every day, you will lower your impact. And the same with coffee. Maybe it's better if you have less coffee, but a good coffee. And it's really important that all people in coffee industry, especially in trainings, coffee shop, have a focus on the coffee chain and how they choose the coffee. As Lucía says, it's not only about point, it's not about score, it's about human being. So it's important that we start to have a consciousness of our privilege, to understand the situation of other people, and intersectionality, of course, is fundamental in this stage. But yeah, I have hope for the new generations, because I see that they are more open. There's a nice melting pot. I'm talking about Italy. You have more people with different backgrounds. You can see cultures that are mixing. And this can be something really hopeful for the future.
Thank you. So accessibility, then transmit the passion for something, and educate is key. Education is key for the next generations. And so to wrap up, because we're conscious of time as well, let's try to look after tapping into many challenges of the coffee industry. Let's try to wrap up with a hopeful note. So I would ask you kindly to express in one sentence what gives you hope for the future of the coffee industry.
I believe the interaction between growers, scientists, buyers, looking into biodiversity, genetics, let's say climate smart farming will lead to, and in addition to the customers rewarding excellence or flavors in coffee, will lead to, between the two of them, much more resilience and delicious coffees in the years to come, actually. So I think that, yeah, the new varieties and the interaction between the community will lead to, it'll keep going. It'll find a way. But I think it'll be good. There's just new things to come.
Thank you. And Lucía,
Okay, just very quickly, I think we live in the age of communication, so that really gives me hope to learn more about coffee and make a more sustainable coffee value chain, more transparent.
thank you. And from your side?
I agree with both, and I really hope that people can understand the power between a cup of coffee, that we can really make a change just with our small ritual in the morning. And I hope that for the next generation, as also Rachel says, they can still have the nature and the green that we have the fortune to have when we was a child. And I hope the same for them.
So before closing, we can open up the floor to some Q&A session if you have any question for our panelists.
My name is Juana Pardo. I'm from Colombia, and right now I'm doing a project on coffee culture, making this comparison between the coffee culture in Colombia and also in Italy, and like looking at how specialty coffee is redefining those traditions. So I wanted to ask the three of you, how do you think specialty coffee is not only redefining that tradition, but also making the value chain more visible and more inclusive?
From my point, is always there. I think that all this can be changed by the barista, because I was thinking about this yesterday. I was at dinner and they really described me 3 wines in a magnificent way. And I think it takes like 10 minutes to explain just 3 bottles of wine. And I say, why people in the morning? I know it's different. In the morning, there's more rush, but you know, who is serving the coffee can really make a change, because it's the last person that will touch that cup before the consumer. So maybe he can really transmit all the job that has been done before in the field, in the roastery, and also the social impact that cup can have. So specialty coffee has this kind of opportunity, because you have a barista that can explain where coffee came from, the process, and all this description, especially like wine. So I think this can really redefine. In my experience, I have always a lot of consumers saying, but coffee just tastes of coffee. And you say, no, it's not, it's not like that. Even sometimes people doesn't know that coffee is a fruit. So when you talk with some barista expert that can really transmit to the consumer, you can make a change.
And maybe I can just add to that, I completely agree 100%, but also you mentioned specifically specialty coffee, right? And it's important to note that, yes, specialty coffee is, let's say, improving our knowledge on the full coffee value chain, but at the same time, what is specialty coffee? And we are still not seeing a lot of coffee that is being produced that is very good, or maybe doesn't even make it to be known as specialty coffee, because it is still hidden in these other parts, right? So yes, but no. For example, specialty coffee can still come from monoculture systems, while maybe there are some really good coffees that come from agroforestry, but they are very, I don't know, led by smallholders, so they are not known. So yes, but up to a point.
I at this point, I would say, I think that I am understanding from your question, I would go to what Jessica was talking about, and go forward into storytelling being such an important aspect in specialty coffee. So storytelling is so much of what you need to do when you are a producer of specialty coffee. You need to know what you have. You need to love what you have, and you need to have the ability to be able to express that to other people.
Maybe one very last question.
Hello. I'm working with green coffee, so my question is actually for all of you, but especially for Lucía. Talking about the small holders, recently visiting, when I entered into this field, my scope was to work with small holders. And as I've been doing my trips more and more often, I'm realizing that it's becoming more and more impossible to work with smallholders. Where do you think the change can come from? Because on my side, trying to access working with smallholders, it's almost impossible due to the collection of coffee, due to the export of the coffee, and the whole process that has to get until you actually get the coffee. So working on my side as an intermediary on my side of the planet where I bring the coffee, if I'm trying to access the small holder, for me, it looks like an impossible process almost to do this. And working with bigger farms, but single farms, and knowing at least that I'm working with one farm and not a huge region, at least I have an impact in the sense of I'm buying all his coffee from the lower quality to the higher quality. While working with a smallholder, where the change can come from that we can work with smallholders in the way you're saying?
Yeah, that's actually a very relevant point, and it's one of, I think, the most difficult parts of working with smallholders because, of course, we need to recognize their work, the inequalities, etc. But actually doing something about it, it's easier said than done. And I think this is the part of the same initial question that said, how can global institutions, but also governments, support smallholders? And this is an effort that should come through all of them, because sometimes they are trapped in these systems that make everything very complicated. Not only maybe they don't know, they don't have the access to the market, but also it's not easy. There are no roads, there are other intermediaries when you arrive, they don't have the knowledge, they cannot separate their coffee, so you don't really know if it's actually this cooperative or this other one mixed with it, like together, and then you end up buying a lot of coffee that you don't really know. They tell you it's Catuai, but it's actually Pacamara, so it happens. So I think that's also a call for governments and private institutions and global institutions to work all together to support smallholders with them and address all the other challenges. So I'm really sorry I don't have like an answer to be like, this is the solution. I hope there was, but I agree and I understand the challenge. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I don't really have anything to add. I, come from a farm, and I don't know either. I don't know.
No, and I'm sure it's a really complex topic. So, yeah, it will be a hope for the future to find a solution, of course. Yeah.
So we're very happy that the conversation got your interest, and we're very sorry we cannot take any more questions. So I would like to thank Jessica, Rachel, and Lucía for sharing their insights and bringing in perspectives from the farming, sociology, and education. So we have seen that how, we all know that coffee is a very complex value chain. So to the many challenges that are inside the value chain, one key takeaway is probably that we cannot look and find solutions from one single actor, and we need to, as it was mentioned already, collaboration from all the players and from the institutions, and also from all of us as consumers to make informed decisions. Thank you very much, and enjoy Out of the Box.